The deaf CEO's daughter suddenly smiled at the cello, and Darius Bennett knew she hadn't heard a single note. 8-year-old Emily Harrington sat near the edge of the crowded Family Day reception at Harrington Dynamics, her small hands resting on a long wooden table while a string quartet played 20 feet away. Around her, employees talked, laughed, lifted phones, and leaned toward the music. Emily watched none of them. Her eyes stayed on a paper cup of water near the table's edge. The surface trembled with every low pull of the cello. Darius noticed because noticing things was part of his job. He stood near the temporary security station in a dark polo, his badge clipped at his waist, an old black backpack resting beside his chair. Most people saw a quiet black man managing doors and guest lists. Emily saw something else. She looked up at him once, then back at the shaking water. Darius followed her gaze. A slow cello note rolled through the lobby. The water moved again. Emily pressed 2 fingers against the tabletop. Darius went still. He had seen that exact look before. Zoe used to make it when she was younger, searching for music in places other people never thought to look. Across the room, Claire Harrington was trapped between 3 conversations at once. Founder, CEO, mother. Her phone vibrated in one hand while an executive waited at her shoulder. She glanced toward Emily, saw her sitting safely, then turned back to business. Darius looked down at his backpack. Inside was a small black puck about the size of his palm. Zoe's surface transducer. He had repaired a loose cable the night before and brought it along so he could return it after work. It wasn't medical equipment. It couldn't restore hearing. All it could do was turn sound into vibration when pressed against the right surface. Darius picked up the backpack and walked over, stopping several feet from Emily. He didn't touch her. He didn't wave in her face. He waited until she noticed him. Then he crouched enough to meet her eyes and signed 2 simple words. "May I?" Emily studied him, then the device, then his hands. She gave a small nod and signed yes. Darius placed the transducer beneath the edge of the wooden table and connected it to the nearby event audio feed already running beside the stage. The next low cello note traveled through the wood. Emily's fingers froze. Another note came. Her palm flattened against the table. Her eyes widened. Then something changed in her face. Not shock. Recognition. She tapped once. Waited. Tapped again, right on the next beat. Darius smiled before he could stop himself. Emily did too. A real smile this time. Wide enough that a woman standing behind them quietly raised her phone and started recording. From across the lobby, Claire finally looked up. She saw her daughter following the rhythm. Saw the strange device. Saw Darius beside her. Her phone lowered slowly. The executive next to her kept talking, but Claire was no longer listening. She crossed the marble floor fast. "Step away from my daughter." Darius looked up. No argument. No sudden movement. He simply removed his hand from the table and stepped back. Emily's smile disappeared. She turned toward Claire and began signing quickly. Claire caught only pieces. Her expression tightened. "Emily, please." The girl signed again, slower this time. Claire still didn't understand. But Lena Park, the ASL interpreter station nearby, did. She stared at Emily, then at Claire. "Ms. Harrington," Lena said softly. "She says she gave him permission." Claire looked at her daughter. Emily lifted her hands one more time. 3 quiet signs. "I said yes." And for the first time that afternoon, Claire Harrington stopped looking at the device Darius had pulled from his bag and started wondering why a stranger had understood her daughter before she did. Claire looked from Emily to Darius, then back to Lena. For several seconds, nobody moved. The string quartet kept playing behind them, soft and almost absurd against the tension in the room. Emily signed again. "I said yes." This time Claire understood the shape of the words, even if she could not follow every movement. Her jaw tightened. "Mr. Bennett, I need you to come with security." Darius gave one small nod. No protest. No explanation. He reached down, disconnected the black transducer from the audio line, slipped it back into his backpack, and stood. Before leaving, he turned toward Emily. He signed carefully. "I have to go." Then one more sentence. "You did nothing wrong." Emily watched him disappear through the security doors. Claire saw that too. In the review room upstairs, Darius removed his badge and placed it on the desk. The security manager looked uncomfortable. "Temporary suspension until we review the footage." "Understood. You are not going to argue?" Darius picked up his backpack. Would it change the footage? The manager had no answer. Down the hall, Claire was already watching it. The camera angle was wide and silent, but it showed everything. Darius noticing Emily, waiting, keeping his distance, lowering himself into her line of sight, signing before touching anything. Lena stood beside Claire and translated the exchange. He asked, "May I?" Claire stared at the screen. "And Emily?" She said yes. Claire folded her arms, but the gesture looked less defensive now, more like she was holding herself still. The footage continued. Emily placed her hands on the table. The vibration began. Her face changed. Claire watched the smile appear again, slower this time without the noise of the crowd around it. "What was that device?" she asked. "I do not know," Lena said, but it did not make her hear. Claire turned. Lena kept her voice professional. Emily was feeling vibration through the table. That is what she was responding to. Claire looked back at the frozen image of Darius sitting several feet from her daughter. Not touching, not performing, just waiting. "And what did Emily sign after I arrived?" Lena hesitated for only a moment. She said, "He asked me first." That sentence stayed with Claire long after the review ended. At 8:30 that evening, Darius walked into his apartment in Bronzeville and set his backpack beside the kitchen table. Zoe was finishing homework with one hearing device resting beside her notebook instead of behind her ear. She looked at his empty belt. "Where is your badge?" Darius opened the refrigerator. "At work." That sounds suspiciously like the short version. He smiled despite himself. "Complicated day." Zoe noticed the transducer sticking out. "Of the backpack. You fixed it." "Mostly. Did you try it?" Darius poured himself black coffee, even though it was too late for coffee. "Someone else did." Zoe studied him. "Someone who liked it?" He thought of Emily tapping the rhythm with 2 fingers. "Yeah." Zoe smiled. "Then you fixed the important part." Darius looked at her. "The cable?" "No. The reason people use things." Across town, Claire sat alone in her office with the security footage paused on Darius Bennett's face. His badge rested on her desk. Her phone vibrated twice. She ignored it. Then she opened the contractor file, found his number, and sent one instruction to security. "Ask Mr. Bennett to return Monday morning." Her eyes moved to the small black device in the footage. For the first time, Claire was no longer asking what Darius had done to her daughter. She wanted to know how he had understood what Emily needed before she did. Monday morning, Darius stood in the same security office where he had left his badge 3 days earlier. Claire Harrington was already there. No assistants. No legal team. Just Claire, the security manager, and the plastic badge lying on the desk between them. Claire picked it up and held it out. "The review is complete. You followed procedure as closely as the situation allowed. Your access is restored." Darius took the badge. "Thank you." That was all. No victory in his face. No satisfaction. Claire had expected at least a trace of resentment. Instead, he clipped the badge back onto his belt and waited. "I asked you here for another reason," she said. The security manager quietly left the room. Claire opened a still image from Friday on the wall monitor. Emily's hands rested flat on the wooden table. "I want to understand what happened." Darius looked at the image. "Which part?" "The device." "It belongs to my daughter." Claire glanced at him. "Your daughter?" "Zoe. She is 11. He explained that the small puck was a surface transducer. It took an audio signal and turned it into vibration through whatever surface it touched. He had repaired a loose cable the night before Family Day and happened to have it in his backpack. "So you knew Emily would react to it?" "No," Claire frowned. "You did not. I knew she might feel the rhythm." "That is different." His voice stayed calm. She did not suddenly hear the cello, Miss Harrington. She felt vibration through the table. Claire looked back at the screen. That distinction seemed small until it did not. "Then how did you know she might want to try it?" Darius leaned one hand against the back of a chair. "I watched what she was watching." "The musicians?" "The water." Claire remembered the paper cup trembling near Emily's fingers. She had not noticed it until the footage review. Darius had noticed from across the room. "And the sign language?" she asked. "I know enough to communicate." "Because of Zoe?" A pause. "Yes." Claire waited. Darius did not continue. She was used to people filling silence around her. Darius seemed perfectly comfortable leaving it empty. "Is Zoe deaf?" Claire asked finally. "Hard of hearing." His expression changed slightly. Not defensive, more careful. "She uses spoken English, sign language, and hearing technology when she wants to. Depends on the day." Claire lowered her eyes. "Emily uses sign language better than I do." Darius said nothing. That silence landed harder than judgment would have. Claire crossed her arms, then slowly let them fall. I have interpreters, specialists, teachers, every resource I can find. That is good. Then why did my daughter respond to you? Darius looked at her for a long moment. She did not respond to me. Claire blinked. She responded to being asked. The room seemed quieter after that. Claire glanced at her phone when it vibrated on the table, but she did not pick it up. I keep trying to help her, she said. I know. You say that like there is a difference between helping and what I am doing. Darius did not answer quickly. Sometimes there is. Claire looked at Emily's frozen smile on the monitor. For years, she had asked experts what her daughter needed. She had arranged schedules, appointments, equipment, support. She had done everything a responsible mother was supposed to do. Yet on Friday, a stranger had asked Emily one simple question before making a choice that involved her. Claire turned back to Darius. What if the person who needs to change is not Emily? Darius held her gaze. He did not smile. He did not reassure her. Then I guess you ask her where to start. Claire looked once more at the unanswered messages on her phone. Then she made a decision Darius did not expect. Come back tomorrow afternoon, she said. There is something I want to offer you. Tuesday afternoon, Darius stepped into Claire Harrington's office and found a folder waiting on the glass desk between them. Claire did not waste time. I want to hire you. Darius remained standing. For security? For Emily. That made him pause. Claire opened the folder and turned it toward him. The consulting agreement was simple, private, and generous. More money than Darius expected for a few hours each week. You connected with her in minutes, Claire said. I have spent years paying people to help her, and somehow you noticed something they did not. Darius read the first page, then closed the folder. I cannot take this. Claire studied him. You have not even asked what it pays. I saw the number. Then what is the problem? Darius rested one hand on the back of the chair, but did not sit. I am not an audiologist. I am not a therapist. I am not a teacher for deaf children. I know my daughter. That does not make me qualified to become an expert on yours. Claire leaned back slightly. She was used to people negotiating upward, not walking away. I am not asking you to treat her. Maybe not on paper. His tone stayed gentle. But that is what this would become. Claire looked toward the windows. Chicago stretched below them in gray glass and moving traffic. I have access to every specialist she could need. Good. And yet I still feel like I am missing something. Her phone vibrated beside the folder. Claire reached toward it by instinct. Darius noticed, then looked away. She stopped before touching it. What am I missing? She asked. Darius took a moment. I cannot answer that for Emily. Claire let out a quiet breath. You keep saying that. Because everybody keeps asking somebody else. The words were not sharp. That made them harder to dismiss. Darius pulled his phone from his pocket, searched for a contact, and wrote a name on the back of one of Claire's business cards. Natalie Brooks. Lakeside Deaf Arts Center. They run family sign language classes and community programs, he said. Natalie is the program director. She is deaf. She knows more about this world than I ever will. Claire looked at the card. You have been there? Zoe has. So have I. Will you introduce us? If Natalie is comfortable with it. Claire nodded slowly. No demand. No immediate call to an assistant. Just a nod. Her phone vibrated again. This time she picked it up, silenced it, opened a desk drawer, and placed it inside. Darius noticed that too. Claire folded her hands on the desk. If I cannot hire you to help Emily, tell me one thing I can do tonight. Darius glanced at the closed drawer, then back at her. When she walks into the room, do not decide what she needs before she gets there. Claire was quiet. That sounds simple. Simple is not the same as easy. He stood and moved toward the door. Behind him, Claire looked at the unsigned contract, then at Natalie's name. Darius. He stopped. What if I get it wrong? He turned halfway. For the first time, there was something softer in his expression. Then let her correct you. Claire looked down at the card in her hand. Darius opened the door. Ask her first. After he left, Claire sat alone for nearly a minute before opening the drawer again. She did not reach for her phone. She reached for a blank notebook instead. Thursday morning, Claire found the answer in a file she had not been looking for. Human Resources had updated Darius Bennett's contractor record after the security review, and one line near the bottom made her stop scrolling. United States Navy. Special Warfare. Honorable Discharge. Former Navy SEAL. Claire read it twice. Then a third time. The quiet man who had refused her money corrected her without humiliating her. and walked away from a generous contract had once belonged to one of the most demanding military units in the country. He had never mentioned it. Not once. An hour later, Darius stood across from her desk with the same calm expression he always wore. Claire turned the file toward him. You were a Navy SEAL. Darius glanced at the page. Yes, ma'am. That is all you have to say? It is accurate. Claire almost smiled. Why did you never tell me? You never asked. The answer was so simple that it disarmed her. Most people would lead with that. Darius shook his head. It was part of my life. It is not the whole thing. Claire closed the folder. Did the military teach you to notice Emily? He looked toward the window for a moment. It taught me to watch a room, to slow down when everyone else is reacting too fast. And the sign language? That was Zoe. Claire waited. This time, Darius sat down. Not comfortably. More like a man deciding how much of himself he was willing to leave in the room. Zoe lost a lot of her hearing when she was little, he said. She uses spoken English. She signs. Sometimes she wears hearing technology. Sometimes she does not. Claire nodded carefully. You learned with her? Eventually. That word carried more weight than the others. Darius rubbed his thumb across the edge of his phone. A photograph of Zoe lit the screen for a second. 11 years old. Bright eyes. A crooked grin. After my wife died, I got very good at managing things, he said. Schedules. Appointments. School. Equipment. Meals. I thought if I stayed organized enough, nothing else could fall apart. Claire said nothing. Zoe hated it. Why? Darius gave a tired smile. Because I stopped being her father and started acting like her operations officer. Claire lowered her eyes. The comparison landed closer than she wanted it to. One night, she signed something to me. Darius raised his hands, slower now. Claire could not understand the signs, so he translated them himself. Dad, stop fixing. Stay. Silence settled between them. Claire looked at the closed drawer where her phone had remained for most of the morning. What did you do? Badly at first. A small breath left him. Then I learned. Learned what? Darius looked at her. That being needed is not the same as being in control. Claire sat very still. The military record was still on her desk, but suddenly it felt like the least important thing she had learned about him. The device from Family Day had not come from some secret training. The instinct behind it had not come from combat. It had come from a kitchen table, an 11-year-old girl, and a father who had once made the same mistake Claire was making now. She reached for the business card Darius had given her 2 days earlier. Natalie Brooks. Lakeside Deaf Arts Center. Do you think Zoe would mind meeting Emily? Claire asked. Darius did not answer immediately. Then he said, Ask Zoe first. Claire nodded. This time, she understood why. And before Darius left the office, she picked up her phone for one reason only, to call Natalie Brooks. 3 Saturdays later, Claire stood inside the Lakeside Deaf Arts Center holding a notebook she had already filled with crossed-out signs, corrections, and reminders to slow down. Nothing about the place looked clinical. Children moved between art tables. Parents practiced signing near the windows, and laughter traveled through the room in hands, faces, and quick bursts of speech. Natalie Brooks met Claire near the entrance and signed before speaking through an interpreter. You do not have to get everything right. You do have to keep showing up. Claire nodded. That part, at least, she understood. Across the room, Emily had already noticed Zoe. Darius stood a few feet behind his daughter, black coffee in one hand, giving her space. Zoe wore one hearing device that morning and signed easily when Emily approached. The first exchange lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then both girls smiled. Claire looked toward Darius. What did they say? He lifted one eyebrow. Ask Emily. Claire caught herself. Old habit. She turned back to her daughter and signed, slowly. What did Zoe say? Her hand shape was wrong. Emily corrected it without mercy. Claire tried again. This time Emily answered, and Zoe laughed. Claire did not understand every sign, but she understood enough to know the joke had been about her. I am being mocked by 2 children. Darius took a sip of coffee. Progress. Claire laughed before she could stop herself. Over the next few weeks, the changes were small. That was why they mattered. Claire stopped calling her interpreter for questions she could ask Emily herself. She practiced at the kitchen table every night. Her notebook softened at the corners. Pages filled with arrows, corrections, and one word written again and again, ask. At Lakeside, Natalie showed her how often accessibility worked best when people stopped designing around assumptions and started listening to the people using the space. Darius never took over those conversations. He stayed where he belonged. A father, a friend, someone who knew when not to speak. Emily and Zoe became comfortable fast, mostly because neither girl treated the other like a lesson. They argued over markers, shared snacks, disagreed about music. At a tactile table, Zoe showed Emily how different bass patterns traveled through wood. Emily pressed both palms down and grinned. Claire watched without reaching for her phone. Darius noticed. He said nothing. Later, while the girls were in an art session, Claire sat beside him with 2 paper cups of coffee. Black. No sugar. Darius accepted one. You remembered. I pay attention sometimes. Sometimes. She gave him a look. He almost smiled. Their conversation stayed simple. Parenting. Work. Chicago traffic. The strange things children considered emergencies. Claire learned that Darius hated asking for help even when he needed it. Darius learned that Claire could admit when she was wrong, but only after fighting herself first. Trust came that way, not all at once. In inches. One afternoon, Claire's phone vibrated during a conversation with Emily. She glanced at the screen, then placed it face down without answering. Emily saw it. So did Darius. That evening, Claire received a message from Evan Cole, her communications director. No explanation. Just a link and 4 words. You need to see this. She opened it. The Family Day video had been posted publicly. 17 seconds. Darius beside the table. Emily smiling at the vibration. More than 2 million views and climbing. The caption made Claire's stomach tighten. Former Navy SEAL makes deaf CEO's daughter hear music for the first time. Claire stared at the words. Across the room, Emily was laughing with Zoe, completely unaware that millions of strangers had just been told a story about her that was not true. By Monday morning, the 17-second video had crossed 5 million views, and almost every version of it told the same false story. Darius had somehow made Emily hear. Claire stood in the communications conference room, while Evan Cole projected headlines across the wall. Miracle moment. Former Navy SEAL changes deaf girl's life. Secret device lets CEO's daughter hear music. Evan looked uncomfortable, but focused. We did not create these captions, but people are responding to them. We should control the story before someone else does. A presentation appeared. Interview requests. Brand partnerships. A short documentary proposal. Claire stared at Emily's face frozen on the screen. Control it how? Tell the emotional version accurately enough to protect the company. Darius sat at the far end of the table. He had been invited because his face was in every clip. Until then, he had said nothing. Accurately enough? Evan looked toward him. I mean, no disrespect. Then say what happened. Evan paused. A former SEAL used a device that gave a deaf child access to music in a new way. Darius shook his head. She already had access to music. She felt vibration. I put a puck on a table. That does not fit in a headline. Truth usually takes longer. The room went quiet. Claire looked at the campaign draft again. Emily smiling. Darius beside her. A line underneath called it a breakthrough. Cancel the interviews, Darius said. Evan leaned back. That is Claire's decision. You are right. Darius turned to her. No challenge in his voice. Just expectation. Claire did not answer immediately. She wanted facts. She had built her company on them. But she also knew what a story like this could do for public attention, accessibility funding, and corporate reputation. That hesitation followed her home. That evening, Emily sat on the sofa with a tablet on her knees. Claire saw the video before she saw her daughter's face. Someone had added dramatic music and the words, "He fixed what doctors could not." Claire crossed the room and sat beside her. Emily signed slowly. Why do they say he fixed me? Claire felt her breath catch. Emily looked down at the screen, then back at her mother. Was I broken? Claire wanted to answer quickly. For once, she did not. She set her phone face down on the coffee table and turned fully toward her daughter. No, she signed, careful and imperfect. Never. Emily watched her. Claire continued. They are telling it wrong. Emily signed one question. Will you? Claire understood immediately. Will you tell it right? The next morning, Claire walked into the same conference room and closed Evan's presentation without opening it. We are not using Emily for a campaign. Evan nodded once. Then we issue a correction. A clear one. Darius watched from across the table. Claire continued. Emily did not suddenly hear. Darius did not cure anything. The device converted sound into vibration. She chose to try it. One board member frowned. You want to kill a story this positive? Claire looked at him. If the story needs my daughter to be broken before it works, yes. Nobody answered. By afternoon, Harrington Dynamics released a plain correction with no dramatic music, no heroic language, and no interview with Emily. Claire lost the viral story. What she gained was quieter. When Darius passed her near the elevators later, he stopped. You did not have to do that. Claire looked at him. Yes, I did. For the first time, Darius did not see a chief executive trying to manage a problem. He saw a mother willing to lose something valuable rather than let the world misunderstand her child. And that night, when Claire walked into the kitchen, Emily was already waiting for her with a question only Claire could answer. Emily was waiting at the kitchen table when Claire came home, her hands folded beside the worn notebook Claire had been using for American Sign Language. Claire set her bag down and took the chair across from her. Her phone vibrated once inside her purse. She left it there. Emily watched her for a moment, then sighed. Are you sorry because people lied, or because you almost let them? Claire felt the question land harder than anything the board had said that morning. She could have defended herself, explained the pressure, explained how quickly the video had spread. Instead, she looked at her daughter and signed slowly, both. One of her hand shapes was wrong. Emily reached across the table and corrected her fingers. Claire tried again. Both. Emily nodded. Claire took a breath. I thought protecting you meant making decisions before anything could hurt you. Emily watched carefully. Claire continued, slower now. I did not understand that sometimes I was deciding so fast that you never got to decide at all. Emily looked down at the notebook, then back at her mother. What will you do next time? Claire almost answered immediately. She stopped herself. What do you want me to do? Something softened in Emily's face. Not a smile yet. Just surprise. She signed. Ask me first. Claire nodded. I will. Emily studied her for another second. Then her hands moved again. You did today. Claire's eyes filled before she could stop them. She did not reach across the table. She did not assume. She opened her arms and waited. Emily looked at her, then stood and stepped into the hug on her own. Claire closed her eyes. For once, there was nothing to manage, nothing to fix, just the quiet weight of her daughter against her shoulder. A few days later, Claire arrived at Lakeside Deaf Arts Center with coffee in each hand. Darius was waiting outside while Zoe and Emily finished an art session inside. She handed him one cup. Black. No sugar. Darius took it. You are getting predictable. I prefer observant. That sounds like something a chief executive would say. Claire smiled. The silence between them felt different now. Easier. Darius had seen the correction the company released. He had also seen Claire refuse every request to put Emily in front of a camera. You lost a lot of attention by telling the truth, he said. Claire looked through the glass doors toward Emily. Then it was the wrong kind of attention. Darius nodded once. That answer mattered to him more than Claire realized. She had changed before, in small ways. Putting down her phone, learning signs, listening longer. But this was the first time he had watched her choose respect when respect actually cost something. Claire turned toward him. Can I ask you something that has nothing to do with Emily? Depends. Dinner. Darius blinked. Dinner is not a question. Dinner with me. He looked at her for a long second. Claire kept her hands around her coffee cup, suddenly less comfortable than she had ever been in a boardroom. No company talk, she added. No parenting strategy. No accessibility meetings. What would we talk about? Claire looked at him, then smiled. Maybe we find out. Darius glanced through the window at Zoe and Emily laughing over something neither parent could see. Then he looked back at Claire. Friday. Claire's smile widened. Friday. That night, Emily found her mother writing one new sentence in the notebook. Claire covered the page too late. Emily read it, grinned, and signed. You asked him first. Claire laughed. Yes. Emily nodded with exaggerated approval. Claire looked down at the words she had written. Asked before assuming. For the first time, that lesson was no longer only changing the way she raised her daughter. It was beginning to change the way she lived. 8 months later, the lobby at Harrington Dynamics looked almost the same, but it worked differently. Visual emergency alerts had been installed beside the elevators. Live captions appeared on event screens. Quiet rooms were marked clearly. Interpreters could be requested without going through 3 layers of approval. None of it had happened overnight. Natalie Brooks had helped lead the work alongside deaf employees, outside specialists, and families who actually used the systems. Darius had contributed only where his experience belonged, helping the security team redesign emergency procedures for people who communicated in different ways. He was still doing security work. Claire was still running the company. And for the past 6 months, they had been quietly dating without turning either family into a promise they were not ready to make. At the accessibility program launch, Darius stood near the back with a cup of black coffee while Zoe leaned against his arm. Emily was beside Claire near the stage. A reporter approached and asked, would Emily like to come up and demonstrate the tactile music station? Months earlier, every face in the room might have turned toward Claire for an answer. Claire did not give one. She turned to Emily and signed, carefully but confidently, do you want to? Emily considered it. Then she signed, yes. My way. Claire smiled. Your way. Emily walked onto the small stage with an interpreter beside her. She placed both palms on the wooden tactile table as a low rhythm moved through it. Her face brightened, just as it had that first afternoon. But this time nobody called it a miracle. Nobody said she had been fixed. Emily looked toward the audience and signed. I like music. The interpreter voiced her words. Emily pressed her hand against the table. I feel it here. Then she looked toward Claire. And I like when people ask me. The room went still. Zoe grinned. Darius lowered his coffee. Claire blinked quickly, but she did not look away. When Emily stepped down, she ran straight to Zoe, and the two girls began signing so fast that several adults gave up trying to follow. Claire understood enough to laugh with them. Later, near the windows, she stood beside Darius. Her hand brushed his, then stopped. Not taking. Asking. Darius looked down, then gently folded his fingers around hers. No announcement. No grand promise. Just a choice returned with another choice. Darius had never changed Emily. He had never given her hearing, and he had never needed to. What changed was the room around her, then the people inside it. Claire learned that love without listening can become control, even when it begins with good intentions. Darius learned that staying present could matter more than solving anything. And Emily reminded everyone that dignity often begins with something as small as being asked. I think that is what makes kindness powerful. It does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it simply makes space for another person to be fully themselves. If this story made you think about a time when listening mattered more than fixing, share that thought in the comments. And if stories about quiet courage, respect, and human connection belong in your day, subscribe and stay with us for the next one. Kindness is a quiet revolution.